Hello, and welcome back to Advanced Editing Techniques. We are at week 2, Thursday, and we are about to come into a big change in the class. So tonight's project, your radio imaging project, will be the end of the radio sort of focus of this class, and then we're going to move into more of a specialized job within pop music production, which we'll look at here in just a few minutes. So real quick, radio imaging due tonight. Don't have anybody here live for questions, so just real quick. Remember, there are 4 submissions: a sweep, an intro, an outro, and either a bumper, stinger, or a drop. These definitions help you define them here. The mixed group will help you have some examples, so you don't have to listen to the radio for 12 hours a day to hear examples. You can just have examples from people that made it. And I went through and demonstrated this in the last class. Remember, as always, the class before the due date is when I'll do the main introduction to a topic, and then the class that it's actually due behind, we'll have a last-minute overview and a little Q&A. So this is due tonight, your radio imaging. No reason to miss that. And then due on Monday is your editing music part 1 project. Also, don't forget your quiz due tomorrow. You can take it now. You might as well also take week 3 quiz and just get it out of the way. Just go ahead and knock the quizzes out and be done with them. All right, so editing music part 1. This is a biggie. This is a huge shift in everything. And it may be that I see more of you show up on Monday with questions about this, kind of last minute before it gets turned in. So this text here is just kind of giving you the perspective. We're changing hats, we're changing job roles. So you're going to be what would be titled as Pro Tools operator, assistant engineer, assistant mix. A title like that would be what would go on. Sometimes even just studio personnel, but that tends to include people that put up mics and everything. This is will often be a more specialized title. So you're going to be the Pro Tools editor, which editor can also be a title. All right, so what we have here is a session. It's a very big session. We download this, and what you're going to see is just the 2V, which is the second verse, the choruses, which are pre-chorus, chorus A, chorus B, and then a break. So we basically just have the center section of the song, and we're going to timeline everything in that across parts 1 through 3. And then in part 4, we're going to copy that out and make a first verse and a third verse and the related choruses, intro, outro, and everything to have a complete instrumental. And then your next class, you're going to get what the artist came up with as their final instrumental and their actual final vocals. So in here, you'll have some guide vocals. You can mute those in every submission. I do not need to hear them, but I did leave them in the session for you all to hear. So the guide vocals are in there, but your final vocals actually come in the next course, and you're going to do all the precision vocal editing in there. So for this class, we're not even focused on pitch because you're going to study your pitch programs and how to do pitch in your next course. So here, all you have to do is focus on timing, okay? So the simple version of what's going on here is you have a session that was a combination of things done in the computer and things done in different studios by live musicians through some really amazing gear. So if you're kind of a gear watcher and a listener of fine sounds, we went out of our way to make sure that these were the highest quality recordings you're working with, but we did not rehearse the session players. So, instead of doing takes until everything's perfect, we did what is very common today and got things in the ballpark, and then we're going to edit them into their final position, and we're going to make them perfect to the grid. In the past, you've taken things and made everything play together based on the drummer or some other musician in the band, and we've actually used Pro Tools to adjust the timing of the grid to match the performance, which is a pretty unique thing that Pro Tools does. But what you're going to hear a lot more of on modern radio, you used to hear that a lot in the past because people didn't want to appear that they doctored anything up. But things have moved on from there. A lot of what you're going to hear on modern pop radio is done perfectly to the grid. It can be mixed by DJs with no problem. Everything's consistent tempo throughout. It's very rare to have any tempo changes when you're listening to modern pop radio these days. There may be a halftime in the break or something like that, but you're not really doing a lot of timing and tempo changes in modern pop music. You do get that in jazz, of course. So the fundamentals of what's going on now are just that we're taking this session and we're going to work section by section, time aligning this one track at a time to 16th notes. So I'm using two tools to do this. Pro Tools has two tools, and we're going to use both of them so that you get experience with both and have some understanding. And the video down here at the bottom is your standard guide video here that I included everything. I've also added a supplemental video recently to kind of help out the tips and tricks video because a lot of folks miss the class. So a lot of the stuff that I would normally go over in the class, I've put on this little video to try to help out. But we're going to be working with two major tools. One is Beat Detective, and this is pretty unique to Pro Tools. It's one of the earliest time alignment tools, and it is still very popular today because it works a little bit different, and sonically it is different than what we have with Elastic Audio and the same sorts of tools that you would have in Ableton and things like that. So Beat Detective will actually cut your audio into little sections and move those sections around and then kind of blend them back together again. So Beat Detective takes your original audio and doesn't alter it. It's not stretching any audio. It's not compressing any audio. It's just cutting it and moving it around. If it overlaps somewhere, you have the option to add a crossfade, but you're not actually, the quantization process is not changing the recording. So you're keeping the perfect recorded tone that you had. So a lot of people prefer this on different instruments for different reasons, and that's fine. The drawback is sometimes you can get some choppiness or some other artifacts depending on how much timing adjustments being done. So it does have its pluses and minuses. The other one we're doing is Elastic Audio, and Elastic Audio will literally rewrite every bit of the audio. So as you time compress or time stretch your audio, it's going to rewrite every bit of that, and it's going to stretch or compress everything to fill the same space. So if you have a waveform that's this long and it needs to move back some, then it's going to like stretch out. Okay. If it needs to move forward, then it's going to compress. So that's the Elastic Audio. We'll actually change bit for bit. Then we have Elastic Algorithms, which we're going to look at in here. So for this first parts 1 and 2, we're only working the drum and percussion. So for the Elastic Audio, the only algorithm we're going to work with is rhythmic. When you get to part 3, we'll be looking at polyphonic, monophonic. But for right now, in the Elastic, we're using rhythmic. And then if you're using Beat Detective, there is no algorithm so much. You're just dialing it in. So this video will show you how to use Elastic and Beat Detective. It goes through track by track. So we're only going to do one track at a time in this. No bulk editing. So you go track by track. And on this one, you're just working on the 2V, which is the first verse you'll see in your session. So it's labeled with the track markers up top. You'll have a section labeled 2V. So we're just focused on the 2V and all of the drums and percussion, which are the yellow tracks, the blue live drum tracks, and the purple VRM tracks, and the bin shakers. And I even put a track guide right here in case anybody's confused. There's no reason to only do some of these tracks and so you didn't know that you needed to do them all, because I list them in bold print. If you remember from the start of class, please read the stuff in bold and then go back and try to read the rest of it, but at least scroll through these things and read the stuff in bold so you have an idea of what's really important. And if you miss some of the words in between, it's not as big of a deal. But if you miss the stuff in bold, then you're really missing out. So scroll through, make sure you catch everything in bold, and then scroll back up and read the rest. Right. All right. So you're going to download the big session. You're going to open it up. Please download this and open it up before the weekend. don't wait until 11 o'clock Monday night to do this. This is the start of a big project, and it's a 4-part project, so you can't pass without doing this. It just keeps increasing in point value, and if you can't do part 1 and part 2 right, then you can't do part 3 to get credit for it. You can't get credit for part 4, and then you end up retaking the class. So it's very important that you get on the right track here right off the bat. So you're not mixing or remixing. There's no level adjustments, no pans, no routing, none of that stuff. We are only focused on one thing, and that is quantizing the performance to our grid. So your grid is already set for you. 16th note values is the lowest note value played in this. We're not doing any work with triplets or compound meter. So it's not a complicated project, but it requires focus and a process to get through. And until your ears are really trained, you'll need to listen back after each individual edit and hear if you did well or not, so you can simply hit Command Z if something went wrong. This is a student project, so it will get the desired results if you work through as demonstrated. If you're not getting the desired results, it means that you did something wrong. The most common error on this is in the capture selection step of Beat Detective. So just kind of keep in mind when you're looking at that to make sure that you have adequately selected the range of the clip that you want to work with, and that you've included the first beat. If the first beat's played a little early, it's easy to miss, and that can throw everything off. All right, so in there, it's just all about the tracking. Here's kind of about the job, how it works. And part of this, so you're going to turn in an MP3. I'm going to listen to that. You're also going to turn through a video walkthrough where you just show me what you did in Pro Tools. I don't need to hear your session in the walkthrough. I know a lot of you don't have the software set up to multi-route different audio. So I'm actually listening to your MP3. I don't need to hear your Pro Tools session. What I would like to hear in the walkthrough is you just discussing it. And it's a lot quicker and easier for you, really. It may seem like more work to do a walkthrough, but rather than take screenshots and having to type out a lot of stuff, if you'll just scroll through your project after you're done, you don't have to show me while you do it. Once you've completed your project, go back and then kind of walk me through what you did. And this serves a few different purposes. It allows me to see that everything's set up working right in Pro Tools. It allows me to understand your workflow. If I can help you be faster, I will. I'm not trying to make you work excessive hours on these projects. My goal is to actually make you faster at the project so that your rate per hour gets better when you're charging per job. So if you're charging $200 to clean up the session, if it can be done in 5 or 10 hours, that's pretty decent money. If it can be done, if it takes you 40, 50 hours to do this, you know, you're going underwater. It's not going to be good, and people aren't going to pay you by the hour to do a lot of the stuff anymore. So it's going to be by the job. So I'm going to be looking, when I'm looking at your walkthrough, I'm going to be looking for ways to maybe see how I can help you be more efficient. I'm also kind of checking your understanding level. If I realize that you're, you know, really doing good, I might give you some advanced tips. If I realize you're struggling with something, I may be able to simplify something for you or help explain it better. And then other than that, I'm also looking to help you identify errors. So if I hear an error in your MP3, you know, it's one thing for me to say, hey, there's an error like 16 seconds in, but you've got a whole bunch of tracks. If I can actually visually spot that error in your walkthrough, I'll screenshot it for you and point it out. So I can be like, okay, instead of having to redo this whole session, here's where your error is at. You know, it's here in this room track. It sounds like there's a million tracks bad because the room track picks up all the other drum mics. And when one of those is out, it makes everything sound like garbage. So it may sound like you have 5 or 10 tracks just all going nuts, and it may just be one track that's off. And if I can visually identify that for you, I will help you do that to make your corrections easier. If you do not provide a walkthrough where I can visually identify that for you, then I'm just going to have to tell you to fix it or start over, and you're going to be on your own to do that. So remember, the walkthrough is for me to help you. I'm actually grading based on what I hear in the MP3, but I will not necessarily assess it all if I can't see the walkthrough to demonstrate how the work was done. So you need the walkthrough to get assessment, and it should be thorough enough that I can actually help you if there's an issue. So that's what it is. Tips and tricks video here. Make sure you got 16th notes there. Make sure your grid is set to musical values. Here's a person that had issues. And when I looked at their grid, you can see it's not set to a musical value, so I had to redo everything. You can see their grid lines are drifting from everything else. That made a nightmare of their session. So be sure that your grid is in proper musical values, not in time code or something else. And then the other thing that gets people in this project is forgetting about these selection tools up here that are kind of under the hand tool. These dictate how things select, whether you're selecting the clip or in the timeline, whether or not they select up and down the whole timeline, or if they only select one track at a time. All of that stuff is right here in these selection tools. If you're not getting the selections that you think you should, you want to check the selection tools, which were referred to as the tick me off tools in AWK, because you tick them on and off, and if you forget about them, they tick you off. So don't forget those tools. All right, so that's really where we are now. Any questions on editing music part 1 due on Monday? And Elliot, I know that you had some other tech issues, so once I close out the video, I'll dismiss and you can stick around for that. All right, so nothing in the chat. I'm going to assume no questions here then. Don't forget that you have your radio imaging due tonight. We looked at that, I think, before you logged on here tonight. And then editing music part 1 be due on Monday. You can also come back Monday for Q&A on that. And all right, so then with that, you are dismissed. Thank you for being here, and stick around for Tech Talk.